You have to work really hard, and it's not always going to work. You have to continue doing it even if it doesn't work. There is no guarantee that you're taking on a project, right? There's no guarantee that your project is going to be successful. But if you believe in that idea, find a way to shape it.
Off Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. One of my favorite quotes is, "The only time success comes before work is in the dictionary." Continuing my conversation with Tamara Adame, I get some insight into visualizing ideas into reality and the work needed to make these things happen. Through hard work and determination, she has established herself as a role model, but with this comes unforeseen responsibilities. The benefits of healthy eating, yoga for tech divers, some memorable moments, and much more. Please enjoy. Just a question. So how was it going from having your own business, doing your own thing, now you're working for somebody else? Was there some challenges in that, or was it something that just kind of you transitioned pretty easy?
Well, I had my first business in 2015. Shortly after I started working for dive shops, I just realized that I wanted to do it my own way. And at the time, I had a business partner who was a close friend as well. And we decided to open a dive shop that had two other different branches, one of which was marine biology education for diving instructors. So we were teaching freshly out of the IDC instructors about marine environments and conservation. And then we had also a part of the business that was a environmental consultancy for dive business. So we were doing audits for dive companies and telling them how to improve their practices to be more environmentally friendly, which was very trendy at the time and still is. But at that time, everybody was still, with the plastic bottles and everything. So we ran that business for a couple of years, and I was in charge of the administration of the business as well as teaching and the other dive related tasks. So I learned a lot about the management, like managing the suppliers and the bills and the accounts and the banks and all of the stuff and the taxes. So it was not really something that I loved doing, but it was my own project. So it just felt like it was my child, there was no question that I was going to do it. And it was really a good experience for me as a professional, just knowing everything that goes on behind a business. And we split eventually because I wanted to continue doing what we were doing and we were so new, but my partner wanted to do different things. So we split the business, and I felt like I had obviously failed at everything at life, but I told myself I'm going to continue just closing this chapter, taking out the last divers that have a booking already because we were closing, but there were maybe 3, 4 bookings that we still had to do. And I had half of the diving equipment from the shop and half of everything. So I just thought, for now, I'm just going to get this done, and then I will figure out what to do. And that was 2017, like at the end of 2017. So I did that, and I just never stopped. Like, clients kept recommending me again and again and again. So I just realized, actually I'm a private guide now. I have the same business, but it's just a one woman show. And I started doing private instruction and private guiding and organizing trips for people. So I somehow continued managing that business in a different scale for myself. And when the pandemic started, obviously most of my clients were Europeans or Americans, and everybody canceled. And I was like, well, this is really bad, but there's nothing I can really do. So I'm just going to ride the wave, and I'm going to think of things that I can do, right? So when I got the job offer from ProTech, it had been like more than just a few months without working. I had been doing a lot of other projects and stuff. And just because I keep a lot of secrets, I have also been working in translation a lot. So I had some translation jobs, and I was just like getting by, but I was not really very stressed about it. I thought whenever it starts again, I will figure out what to do. So the transition was a good opportunity. Like, oh, I could just switch, it's the time to switch. So I'm just going to switch. And one of the reasons that I told Patrick why I'm accepting the job is because I want to belong to something that is bigger than just myself. Because I know that I have a lot of potential, that I am very creative, that I have a lot of connections, a lot of good networks and relationships, and that I have a lot of knowledge to do a lot of things. But it always just feels very, very small. And I want to do bigger things that matter for more people, or to scale the power that I have, right? So that's one of the reasons. And the other reason, honestly, I was happy that I could join a company where I wouldn't have to do the other part. Like, I wouldn't have to manage it. I wouldn't have to look for my clients, or I wouldn't have to answer the emails, which in turn is a little bit contradictory because I do have a lot of my own clients that come to ProTech now. Of course, communicate with them personally, and I still think that a part of me having a fully booked agenda depends on how much I interact, or it's not like I stopped doing it, it's just a different way of having the responsibility. And then at the time, obviously, when nobody had a lot of work, then it was an opportunity to maybe have some steady work within a structure that allows me to grow as well, instead of just trying to figure it out on my own. No? So I told myself, if it doesn't work out, I'll just start again. Like, I've done it many times, so I'm not scared of starting again. I did it coming to Europe. I did it going back to Mexico. I did it with the company. So it's something that I don't really fear. But yeah, then I'm here for 3 years and a half, and I don't feel like I have to go anywhere else, or like I don't have a project to do something more than continue growing for now. It's a very growth induced period of my life. So I'm happy.
I could definitely understand having your own business. They always say if you, well, I can't remember the exact saying, but if you own your own business, you never stop working, right? There's never a
Never.
little, yeah, because there's always constantly something to do. Whereas now, if you start working with someone or working for another business, it does kind of take that stress away from having
Completely.
to do everything. And now you have a team working with you as opposed
Yeah.
to you are the team, So no, that's awesome.
And the commitment, you can have a lot of commitment, but it's never going to equal the person who is the owner of the company. There is just no comparison to the level of responsibility that you have towards the other people in the team is very different. So I don't mean that I never want to be a business owner again, but being a business owner taught me how intense it is to own something, and how, like you said, you're just never going to have a day off, because you can go on a holiday, but you're still thinking if you're going to pay the salary, or you're going to fill the tanks, or do this. So yeah, it's an experience that I think a lot of divers don't have, and it gives me a different perspective also about Protec itself, or the businesses where I have worked, because I have done the financial part before. I know that diving doesn't have a huge margin, and I not only know that we're not in this business for money, but I also know how little money there is at the end of the month, and also I think people in this industry truly love what they do. Like, there's no way you can do this job if you don't think that it has a very deep meaning and a purpose.
So aside from the business side of ProTech, because one thing I always kind of like to ask people, and some of the other people from ProTech that I've interviewed, so if I'm headed to Mexico and I'm choosing a place to go to, why ProTech? Why go to ProTech?
Well, I think historically it has a relevance because Protec was the first technical dive shop in Playa del Carmen. And I think that any major instructor that you meet today around the world at some point has gone through Protec, or has had some type of relationship with Protec instruction. I think that together the team has probably hundreds of years of experience together, coming also from very different backgrounds. But there is a feeling of a family inside Protec that a lot of the divers just fall in love with, because although we are all very weird people, and like, we're just but I think that people find a place in Protec. Like, it just feels like you're going somewhere familiar, and that really charms the heart of a lot of people. I think that at ProTech, we have divers who have been diving and exploring all over the world, and the experience is transferred directly to our students. So you have like a collective energy and a collective passion that is very intense because we are like 10 people full on, and this is all we do. So it doesn't mean that the other shops or the other businesses are not good or that the instruction is not good, but it does have an element of this, intensity, this passion, this giving everything that we have, and it really shows to the students. So they see an example, and we have a lot of mentorship relationships with the people who come through ProTech, even when they are not in training. It is known that we are very instructional. Like if we go fun diving, we're still gonna give feedback about the dive and we're gonna debrief, and so we're very invested in that way. The other thing that is very relevant is that the shop is like a landmark, it's a properly established diving facility building like not many others. So the fact that you have the lodging, you have the filling station, you have dedicated areas for rebreather divers. I think last year we had something ridiculous like 25 rebreather divers at the same time. And like that's sort of like all in. Like you go to one place, you have everything. The only thing that we don't own is the taco stand across the street, but I think that uh, we may have a business opportunity there. Protect Tacos is the only thing we don't have on the street. So yeah, I think it's a very holistic experience. Yeah, you get super high level instruction. At the same time, you feel that this is a family friendly environment, and then you're in a top notch facility. So it's like a hub. And we have so many repetitive divers. It's incredible. Like sometimes I think, have I ever gone back to the same place as many times as my divers come back here? They leave and they're writing to you like, oh, I think I'm planning the next trip. And we do have people who come 4, 5, 6 times a year for years, So we're also busy trying to provide more opportunities for diving, more dive sites, more new cenotes that opened, and to encourage them to go a little bit off the known places, off the beaten path, and all this. So with the exploration background, that is also very exciting to be able to bring someone to a place where you explored and to show them and tell them the stories firsthand. People appreciate that.
Definitely the pro tech reputation speaks for itself. Saying earlier, it's very, very well known. And I was kind of telling you the story last time. I was like, oh, I don't know if you know, but I kind of met you before. And it was super funny because so I'm just, I'm going through my cave training, and I remember we showed up to Ponderosa, and like the whole pro tech team was there. I was like, man, this is like, wow, like the whole pro tech team, right? And there was a few of you. I think I met, I did meet Skanda. I'd reached out to him before I went to Mexico just to try to line up an interview. And there was like you, Skanda, I think Jake was there, and a few other people. I remember I was walking up the stairs, and my canister light had fallen off, and I didn't know it, but you'd pointed out. You're like, "Hey, your light." You were just being nice. You're like, "Hey, your canister light fell." But I remember just being so embarrassed. I was like, "Oh my god!" Like here I am in front of ProTech, my canister light just falls out. And oddly enough, what was funny about that was I had tried the new bungee method that day,
Yeah.
and I literally went back to the shop and was like, I'm never doing the bungee method again. Like, I'm clipping this thing. I was thinking it's going to be not.
I need a plate. I need the fasting method. No, I don't remember your face. I do remember doing that, but there is also no judgment. It happens to everybody. It has happened to me in the last weeks. Like you say, trying the bungee method is just living on the edge. No, you never know. When your canister is going to be hitting on your ankle, and then you're like, what is this? Oh man.
It was funny though. No, but everybody that I have met from ProTech, I haven't met obviously everybody, but I feel like I've met a handful of people, and everybody is just super nice, willing to share information, not overbearing or anything like that. And it's been such a pleasure to be able to interview and speak to people because it is such a well-known shop, and it's been absolutely amazing. So,
Thank you.
but just the, that slight embarrassing moment that I got over, but it's all good.
I'm not gonna remember it as a first impression, don't worry. But it is nice, like it warms my heart that I sometimes don't realize that people know me from social media, because I didn't really start social media in a way that I have never wanted to be an influencer. I don't like to be called an influencer, or even like a content creator. It's not really what I feel like I am. And so sometimes people have an idea of who I am because of what they see. And at the dive side, I'm just the diver. So sometimes I'm not interacting as much as people expect, or sometimes there's very open people who would just come and interrupt me in the middle of something. And I realized, well, I made it that way. Like I put myself out there, and when people introduce themselves, I appreciate it a lot. A lot of people write to me afterwards and say I didn't dare to say hello, which it makes me feel a little bit bad, because I'm just one diver there, like you can say hello to any diver at the dive side. And I think most people are friendly at the dive side. We help each other and we support each other. It doesn't matter what shop you are from. If an instructor has a problem, and especially if they are teaching or guiding, anyone at the parking lot will lend a hand or equipment, or to make the other person able to give their service or give their class or finish their day. So, yeah, oh sorry, my fin broke, here's my fins, like someone has a spare that you can use. So in that sense, yeah, the meeting people at the dive side after having interacted online is sometimes it's a little scary for me, because I don't consider myself that social, in real life. But apparently it looks like I'm way more friendlier than that. So I have to live up to the legend.
And what's funny is the influencer thing. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think it's just has sometimes like a bad name, because usually when you see about it, it's like, oh, these influencers, but you're doing it in a positive note. Like you're spreading good information. There's a positive side to it, right? So that's why I kind of don't, because I hate the same thing. Like someone's like, oh, you're an influencer now, you have a podcast, and I'm like, no, I don't want to be an
Yeah,
influencer, right?
the way that I see it, in a way, I'm just going to say this very lightly, but sometimes I'm offended, like I think that I put a lot of work and a lot of effort in my profession to just be reduced to an influencer. I'm like, I'm much more than that. I work really hard to be a great instructor. So my social media is not my priority. I have the opportunity to share, and I'm very open about sharing things about my career and sometimes my personal life as well. But I think that in the media, influencers are a million different ways, they have a million different shapes. And I think it did get a wrong connotation at some point, because they are seen as superficial people that are paid to give a message out, regardless of what the message is. If you are paid to just be on the screen saying, this is a really good hotel, then that's your job, like it's like a work, a job. And I don't see myself like that. Patrick told me once, like, you're an influencer, and I was very, very offended, because I just don't see myself like someone who is paid to say a message. I say what I think, and it's not easy. It's really not easy to be upfront publicly and stand by what you think and continue doing the things you believe in when they are maybe not what the majority of the people thinks or believes or approves. So there is kind of like a role that I almost sometimes have to fulfill, because now people think that I'm this way, and I'm just a normal person. We all are normal people. So we have days when we are happy and we have days when we are not. So then sometimes I got messages like saying, like, you are faking your personality online, and when I met you in person you weren't friendly to me. And I thought, well, sometimes we also don't like people. Sometimes we also, maybe I had a family emergency, so I'm in my head. So we tend to judge by what we see on the screen. But we are just people. And the main objective of my life is to be a good instructor, not to be good on the screen. It's a tool to guarantee that I have an earning for my life, that people know about my work so that we can connect, but it's not the focus of my life or my career. So I have never been paid to say a message online. I have never been paid to give a review. I have never signed a contract to give any type of communication online. The things that I recommend, the products that I use, products that I have because the brands have sponsored me, those are the products that I use because I believe they're the best for me. I don't have this type of relationship where I'm being told what to do, no? And this can be good, it can be bad. Like we don't know. Every day is a different challenge also in terms of understanding that you being exposed are also exposed to a lot of criticism, or people invest time in telling you that what you're doing is shit, and then you just have to live with it. Like, maybe it's shit for you, so then don't follow me, or you know. But it's beautiful also to be able to connect with people who reach out and sometimes say, I never thought you would reply to my message, but how can I not reply? This is a human talking to another human. No, that's how I see it. But yeah, sometimes I don't want to be on Instagram and I'm away for a couple days. Sometimes I just want to share something, so it's more organic like that. It's what I prefer instead of being an influencer.
I get that, the human side of it. Everybody's always not in a good mood. And if there is somebody out there that's always in a good mood, that's the person you probably have to worry about. But no, and that's it's such a bummer because I've had a little bit of criticism on the podcast. It's funny that people, I feel sometimes it's like, you really took the time to write that, which I think is
Yeah.
pretty funny. But it's like one of the things that I got, and it still kind of bums me out at times, is they're like, oh, you laugh too much on the podcast. And I'm just like, what? I laugh too much? I mean, I get it. I do laugh a lot. It's fine. But I'd rather be known to laugh a lot than be angry all the time. But the fact that someone's like, you laugh too much, it's just, I was like, okay. It still bums me out. But at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? Who cares? I laugh. Like, it is what it is,
Yeah,
right?
you're gonna get constructive feedback and you're gonna get criticism. And when you are willing to be out there, you just have to accept that people are gonna look at you and think something. And when you think something about someone, you are making this assumption based on the information you have and how you process it. This is, each person is gonna see it differently. Some people are very positive and they still have the wrong idea of who I am, and they think I am something positive, but I'm not that. A lot of people, for example, talking about the internet or how Protec is seen from the outside. I've had people tell me, oh, I didn't come to Protec because I don't have an X deep. But we have never we have never closed the door to anyone who did not come in with an X deep. But okay, there is a brand relationship and there is a strong message behind it, but what people make of it is not under my control. That's the message. Like, what you make of what you see is not under my control. I can put out a message, and yet this message may not be perceived as exactly what I wanted to convey. But it is fun as well, it is fun, and I like to talk about things that other people don't want to talk about. Like recently, talking about how hard things are for a diver in maybe a different level because I'm reaching an advanced realm of certifications that not a lot of people have. But the struggle is real for everyone. So I like to talk about those things, I like to talk about the opportunities that people have to train with women. For instance, I never had a woman instructor. All my instructors have been men, and I have been lucky that these men were very generous with their teaching and pushing me forward and inspiring me to continue. And I hope to be a female instructor for anyone who seeks a female instructor. I hope to be the one that I have never met yet, for myself. But I cannot pretend that only female instructors are good because all my instructors were men. So it can be very biased. Like, the messages can be very biased, or yeah, very exclusive to only one experience. So we are exposed to so much. We need to learn how to filter as well. And then obviously you have, the internet is now populated with how many 50 years of crap that just floats on the internet. So you come across some things that, like you said, like, am I willing to spend 5 minutes telling them that, for example, my pet peeve is like the bubble rings. It's like, if I see another bubble ring video, I'm just going to close my Instagram account. Now everybody goes and sends me one, no? I just don't like that. So I don't follow the accounts where people are doing bubble rings because I tell the divers if you spend the same time working on your buoyancy instead of doing bubble rings, you would be getting way better. But yeah, I can be a little judgmental too. I have the right to be it. And then sometimes I just instigate and send to my friends whatever their own pet peeves are. And I say, like, look at that guy. They're wearing ankle weights. It's like, how can they do this? So we all have it. We're all humans. We're not superheroes, although we look like one.
That's funny. I feel like every time I see a bubble ring, I'm gonna think of you. So
You will. You will. We all have our pet peeve in diving, the one thing that you cannot look at, and it can also be funny, like
yeah.
if you just turn it into a fun thing.
No,
Uh,
no, for sure, for sure. That's why the memes were invented. Is yeah.
yes, yeah, and there's some really good ones. I'm still waiting for someone to make a meme about me. So far, I haven't fallen in the trap of cutting my hair really short. Like, female tech divers are sometimes known for having very short hair. I understand 100% why they want to do that. Like, I want to do that every time I put my hood on, but I'm still keeping the length as long as possible. But those memes are fun.
That's when you know you've made it in the internet world is when you become a meme.
When you become a meme, yes,
uh,
there's opportunities are out there.
you know what's funny actually? So up until I can't remember. It was late last. It was after October of last year. But yeah, I used to have really long hair. It actually went down to basically like the middle of my back, and
What?
it was really long. I grew it out for a long time, and then I literally cut it because I went and took a course where I was basically, I hadn't worn a dry suit
Entangled?
and yeah, no, well, it was just like the putting the dry suit on and off, the hood on and off. I was just over it, and literally, like, I came like 2 days, 3 days after the course. I just went to the barber and was like, just chop it off. I can't
Chop
do it
it.
anymore.
Oh, yeah, I understand.
But my next question I wanted to ask you is so you recently had an article published in In Depth. I'm assuming obviously you still practice yoga. You said that you used to be an instructor. Are you still a yoga instructor?
I'm not a yoga instructor anymore. I haven't taught in many years. I taught yoga when I lived in Brussels. What happened is, for the gossip, in 2012, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. So I had a really hard time with my health, and I was having a lot of symptoms that are similar to arthritis and many other things. Like autoimmune diseases are really bad because you don't know what it is, but everything hurts. So in that process of trying to get better, I started doing plant-based diets, and then I started also doing some yoga to feel better, to try to have some movement, to feel also like I had some strength pulled out from somewhere, and I was very dedicated. I had a practice for some years, and then the opportunity came up to do a teacher training, and at the time I felt like I could prove to myself that I was not done health wise, like I felt very weakened by this condition. And so I started the teacher training, and I loved it. It changed my life, and then I started teaching. So I taught in the evening after my day job. And going back to the Indonesia story, part of going there was to be able to study with some masters in Bali. And so I spent some time doing that before I went to Pulawe for the diving and all that. And shortly after that, I left to Mexico. So I have done more yoga on and off, but I don't have such a steady practice like I did before. Like not every day at 6 in the morning I'm doing 2 hours of yoga. No, I'm not. But something that is really important for me is what I learned in the yoga training and in the yoga community is that yoga is not only the asana, not only the poses or the practice that is physical. Yoga is also being kind to other people, is being kind to yourself, is eating what your body needs to function properly, all the other values, which are common values with other religions, with other philosophies. It's not exclusive to yoga, but so trying to integrate that with my work is something that I found myself doing after I had done it for a while. I was like, actually, I have been putting this in place, both the mental aspect, the breathing, the control of the body, the observation of your own body connection from the brain to the muscle, and all of this. So I thought this really comes together very well with technical diving. And I don't ask my students to do yoga in my cave training yet. But I do have a lot of students who go to a yoga class if I suggested, which I appreciate a lot because when you suggest them, I mean, someone who doesn't exercise and suddenly they go to yoga every day during the training so that they can improve their flexibility or their comfort, it really says a lot about the person wanting to put in the time and the effort, no? So yeah, I ended up writing that article and doing this beautiful photo session in one of these magnificent entrances of the cenotes, and that was really fun. And I actually think that I should put up maybe something more formal, like a short program where we explore yoga a bit more in preparation for the classes, or yeah, some people say you should teach a yoga class before diving. Yeah. We do have a rooftop, so maybe it's not impossible.
No, I definitely see the benefits of just yoga in life, not even to mention scuba diving. I could definitely see a lot of the added benefits for diving or technical dive, any aspect of diving. Just curious real quick, are you still plant-based?
No, the pandemic really changed my view, and I just thought everything's going to shit, so I'm just gonna eat the tacos, like I'm not gonna. It has to do with also feeling better in my health. I had recovered a lot of my health, so I didn't think it was necessary to do it all the time. I don't eat a lot of meat in general. So that was like 8 years before the pandemic. Yeah, so from 2012 I have not cooked meat in my house. Like, I don't know how to cook a steak anymore. Like, I just don't know how to do it. I eat vegetables at home, but then when I go out or if I'm, at the taco stand, I will eat the meat. But yeah, that was a pandemic thing. There was so much stress everywhere. And I was just like, look, it smells good. I'm going to eat it. And there is also a story where my mom made some pasta and she forgot that she put bacon in it. And then I ate it. And I was like, what? And I was like, Mom, why you put bacon in my food? And she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Was it horrible? I'm like, it's bacon. Of course it was not horrible. So they kind of turned me.
That's funny. That's funny. I can't remember how long ago. At some point in the past, we'll say in the past 5 or 6 years, there was a documentary. The documentary might be a little bit older, but plant-based was something, and it's so funny when people hear me say this because I do love, coming from Texas, I love barbecue, I love meat, steaks, whatever, right? I like meat, but I do also see the benefits of going towards a plant-based diet. So I was just curious, but it definitely helped a lot for your illness.
Yeah, exactly. So I had some really strong reactions to eating animal products that if I would drink a glass of milk or if I would eat like steak or like, yeah, meat in general, my joints would kind of freeze. So then I couldn't move my hands. It was really painful. I wouldn't be able to like open a doorknob or like I couldn't bend my fingers. Yeah, it was really scary. And luckily at the time I was living in Belgium, so healthcare was really good and they took care of me and they did a lot of different studies and to find exactly what it was and how to deal with it. But I also went on a treatment that was very aggressive. So it was a long experience, let's say, of trying to figure out how to control it. And then I came across an article that said plant-based diets help with this type of conditions. And I, at that point, said, I will try anything. Like I was a barbecue girl. Like I love ribs. I love all the food. Like, but I was in so much pain. I just said, I will do anything that I have to do. So from one day to the other, I just changed completely and went on a plant-based diet. And 7 days later, the pain was gone. So I do believe that there is a power to the choice of food that everybody has, and I think that we should use it. It doesn't mean you should be a plant-based eater only, but you can use it. If you're feeling in a certain way, you can feed yourself with certain types of food that help you. And for example, in diving, people who have sinus problems, people who have a lot of like phlegm and snot, and this can be impairing for equalization. So if you cut dairy products before diving, you're going to have a lot less mucus and you're going to have less equalization problems. So that is something that I'm more motivated to use it however I need it, rather than saying I'm 100% plant-based and that's it, because I go to the gym, so maybe I do need the fake after recently that I started lifting weights with Mekan. Well, I lift the bar with no weights on it, but we're going to get there, don't worry. But yeah, it's more about getting what you need instead of just feeling like that's all you have.
Yeah, I definitely have done. I haven't implemented the research or put it into practice, but I've looked into it, and man, I feel like you're giving me some positive changes here, because I might go. I'm not going to say I'm going to go plant based, because I'll be realistic. That'll probably never happen fully plant based, but to incorporate it heavily into the diet, I think would be an
Yeah.
absolutely good thing.
The thing also, it depends where you live, because there are places where it's more difficult to have a variety of foods in a plant-based diet that allows you to have the nutrition that you need. So living in Europe, that was not a problem. There's tons of options. You don't have to cook it yourself. Like there's a lot of readily available things. When I moved to Mexico, I had to make everything myself. So I had to process the foods in a way that was intended to be yummy myself. And sometimes these processes is like, oh well, you have to like soak the chickpeas for 3 days or whatever. So there I was, it takes me 3 days to make one dish. So at the same time that I had a diving job, I didn't have the time. So it was a bit of a torture. But you can definitely use this knowledge whenever you need it and eat what you need when you need it. That's what I tend to do more.
So my next question I wanted to ask you is, and this is because I am just personally curious. Well, not personally curious. What's the right word for it? Looking for advice, I guess. Is you just started a website? So or you have your website. So my background is I have a website. I have done nothing with it. I am trying to do something with it. I am not very good at it. But can you tell me a little bit about starting the website and what your goals are with that?
Well, the website is not actually new, but we refurbished it because
Sorry.
I had built my own website way back, and it was just a point of contact, like someone looking on Google will find your website, come to you for diving. That was it. But at some point, I went in to edit something and I broke it and I could never get it back. I'm not a webmaster or anything. And then it stayed like that for a couple years, and I've been working at Protec, so I don't really need a website of my own in that sense. But recently, I was working on the Protec website with my friend Jack, and he is a webmaster, and we had a project together to improve some stuff behind the scenes for the media for Protec. And then I just had the idea, like, what if I have my own website and I make it new again with information about the projects where I've worked and things like this? Because there is nowhere where you can look at all my experience or in a way of a curriculum. So that was my idea, that my curriculum is somehow on the website, so that when people find me through Google, they can already read a little bit more in depth what my background is about, and you can look at different projects that I've been on. I wish that it was more complete, like I could have a page per project, but yeah, and working on the website just made me realize I have had so many projects, they don't fit in the list. And then the other idea was that half of it, well, there's a Spanish version of the website because I do want to train Mexican divers. So, how are they going to find me if they're looking on Google in Spanish for a technical cave diving instructor if I'm not on the internet in Spanish? So that was the aim. Obviously, all the people that I train come to train at Protec, but it's a gateway for people to find me, and if they decide to train with me, then they are welcome into the Protec family right away.
Yeah, it's something that I feel like I always have so many ideas of things that I want to do, and I was like, oh, I could do this for the website, I could do that for the website, and then it just never happens. And then there was at one point I went in and changed a few things with goals. I was like, okay, it'll only be like this for a week, and it's been sitting like that for like a year and a half now.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. It's not easy to maintain a website. So I do have experience in working, not creating the website physically, but because I have a background in university. What I studied is communication and marketing, and then I worked in marketing for many years. So I do have experience creating a project where a website is involved. Like I have the let's say the project manager part of that job. I know how to do it. So the thing with the websites is like if there is no one in charge of updating it, you need to be very smart that the information you put in there is going to be kind of timeless. So one thing, for example, if I write on my website, oh, I'm 40 years old and I'm this and that, the next year is not accurate anymore because I won't be 40 years old. So you need to find a way to put the information there that you don't have to go back and change it so quickly, or you need to be on top of it with the updates. And usually things like blogs get abandoned pretty quickly because people are excited in the beginning and then they don't write an entry for 15 months and then they're like, oh, I used to have a blog, you know. So you require a lot of discipline. Same with podcasts. Like you have a podcast and you have to work a lot on it. You cannot just be like, oh, I don't know who I'm going to interview. You have to be on the research and plan it. And so it's a little bit that's kind of, you need to build like a workflow that you're going to use for yourself. Now, on my website, I just made it so I don't have to touch it in a while because I don't want to spend more time online. I want to spend more time diving, not more time online.
I hear you. It's funny though, because I've kind of debated to myself where I might I might just do my age in decades now, because I might just say, yeah, I'm 40, even when I'm 45. Yeah, I'm 40, and then when I'm
I'm in my
50, I'm 50.
40s and just let you guess where in the 40s you are. Well, I don't remember exactly what I put in my, I don't think I put my age on the website, but you can say I was born in the 80s or I was born in the 90s. I grew up in the 80s and learned to dive in the 90s. And like, what? Well, how old are you?
That's funny. I just tell people, well, I am an 80s baby, but I just tell people like, yeah, I'm an 80s model, you know. So that's when I was created. So but yeah, I was thinking about that
Yeah.
because I kind of forgot. Someone asked me the other day, I'm like, oh, I'm 40. And then I was like, oh, no, wait a minute. Because I just turned 41 this year. And I was like, oh, shit, I'm
Me
41.
too.
Okay. So
Me too.
are you 83?
Yes,
Oh, okay. When's your birthday?
in July.
Oh, okay. I'm a
Yeah.
April baby myself, so.
Uh-huh. Yeah. But you know what's funny? Well, there's a lot of young people in ProTech, but Jake is the youngest one of the company. So one day we were talking and we're having this discussion, and I said, Jake, when you will be my age, you will see things different. And he's like, what, when I'll be 33? And I'm like, no. And he's like, well, I'm 29. How old are you? And I was like, Jake, I'm 40. Like this was a while back. And he's like, no. What? I could never look at you the same. And I'm like, I'm sorry.
It's a
Yeah.
good feeling though. It's a good feeling when you don't look your age, because I feel like I know some people that are 40 and I'm like, man, it's like, whoa. Okay.
I don't look like what I thought 40-year-old people look,
Oh, it's
for
so
sure.
different. Yeah, like, because I feel like I remember when I was like 15 looking at a 40-year-old, like my parents, I'm like, man, they look so old. But yeah, I don't know. It's times are changing, right? It's the water.
Yes, it's the water. But the cold water from the cenotes is keeping me in shape. So I'm happy about that. Probably is because I don't use any makeup also, so my skin hasn't really suffered, and I don't go in the sun. So that's the recipe when people
Ah,
ask me.
okay. I tell people, I'm like, it's my Asian genes, because I'm half Asian, so I'm like, it keeps
Yeah,
me looking.
yes.
But last two questions for you before I let you go. This first question, I kind of hate it, but I'm curious. Out of all of the projects that you've been on, is there one that stands out the most?
Yes, I went to the Marshall Islands before it was cool. Um, Nobody knew what the Marshall Islands was when I went there in 2018, and there were an average of 50 divers per year diving in the Marshall Islands. There were no photos on the internet. You could not get a photo of the Saratoga or any of that. So I was there on a project with Columbia University, as a technical diver to sample the bottom of the Bravo crater, which is the crater of the biggest bomb detonated on the planet. So that project was the first project that launched my career in combining tech diving and scientific diving, which I'm very passionate about. So we called it Tech Meets Science. It was not only very fun, but it was also a challenge technically and physically. And we were obviously isolated, no internet for about 3 weeks that we were on the ship. And we were doing the most horrible dives that exist. We were dropping in the blue, going all the way to about 55 meters, and then taking samples that had to be on a radius pattern. So we had to drive a DPV with the first sample to the second spot, take a second sample, drive to the third spot, all of this in zero visibility, following a bearing, and then take a third sample and then shoot the samples up to the surface with a lift bag. So it was really complex. It was pretty deep, and we were doing it on air. Oh, she did it on air. Yes, because people used to do that on air. It's not what I would choose to do today. I was heavily criticized for going into this radioactive hub, and how could I risk my life? And I was like, I'm going to the Marshall Islands. I don't care if I'm radioactive afterwards. I had no concerns, and I was super eager. I was super new. The curriculum that this project gave me has for sure been a stepping stone for everything that I've done before. I remember every day of the project like it was yesterday. It wasn't that long ago, it was in 2018, but it's been a while, you know. And I was with very, very intelligent people around me, with geologists, hydrologists, and biologists, and law experts, and Pulitzer Prize photographers. And then there was me, you know, and there was also mostly women on the boat. There was only two men in the project, and all the other people, the scientists and the media and everything, we were women. The technical diving team, we were mostly women, and then there was Camille Lacarrière, who was my instructor, mentor, course director, close friend, everything. He was directing us, and he was also our trainer. But the divers were Cyrielle and Mara and myself. So it was really important as a moment in my life when everything started going in this direction. And just being there was also beautiful, and it just exposed me to the world, right? It was fantastic. I got to do two fun dives out of the whole trip, and one was the Bikini Pass. I just remember that I was crying the entire dive. I don't know if it's because I was so tired or I was overwhelmed, but I just kept crying and crying and crying. I couldn't believe that I was there. And there were hundreds of sharks swimming around me, and just the vastness and the immensity of everything, and the beauty and pristine coral reefs and all of this really, really marked my life. And then I did the Saratoga, and the Saratoga was very special, but I was completely overwhelmed by it as well. So I don't remember a lot of the dive. I just remember parts of the dive. And I remember that I dropped my camera to the bottom, and I was already around 40 meters. So I was like, oh, I lost my camera, you know, and one of the other divers said, I'm going to go and get it for you. So they went to the bottom. And when I saw, you know, the dimension of where I was compared to where they went to pick the camera, and then I looked around, there's like airplanes scattered everywhere around the Saratoga. They just look like toys because the size is so overwhelmingly big. Yeah, I it was too big for me. But the fact that I always go into projects where I believe I can do the job and I end up doing it, that's where my growth happens. If they told me you have to be ready for doing that, I would never be ready. I would never have all the tools I need to go there. You go there, and that's where you adapt, and when you adapt is where you grow, and then, like Patrick likes to say, and then you dominate. But yeah, that was my first big project, and I am super grateful to have had the opportunity. And I think about it often. I think about the Marshall Islands pretty often. I hope I will go back.
You know, I always like to end on some sort of advice question. And you've started your own projects. You've been a part of a lot of projects. Somebody out there that wants to start their own project, or maybe they're about to go into a project? And I know you just mentioned some of it, but what is the best piece of advice that you could give to that person who is just kind of at the beginning of that journey, either starting a project or they want to go and be a part of a project?
You have to work really hard, and it's not always going to work. You have to continue doing it even if it doesn't work. There is no guarantee that you're taking on a project, right? There's no guarantee that your project is going to be successful. But if you believe in that idea, find a way to shape it. And you have to be very pragmatic. So it's about visualizing what you need to accomplish that project. I don't have like, we talked about dreams, or like, was it your dream working at project? But I don't have like a dream, like, oh, it would be so nice. I just, if I have an idea, I put it on a paper and I write, um, I would like to go to Antarctica. So what do I need to be able to dive in Antarctica? I need to have some cold water experience, and I need cold water gear, and I need to learn about the practices, and I probably need to learn about Antarctica itself. So what can I do today? I can Google, I can buy books, I can read and inform myself. How long is a trip? Who goes there? What boat takes you to, like, and then you started. Because when you start feeding yourself with a topic, it's very possible that the other things are going to start materializing. If you just feel that these things are dreams, you don't have a step ahead that you have to take. Yeah. So I tend to be very practical about the projects. Like, I need a camera. So what type of camera takes the photos of the type that I need? So then you research cameras. Then you have a camera, you have an image of the camera, you have the name, you have the price. So then how can I provide myself with this camera? Like, how many months would I have to work, or how much I have to save? Those are things that just put in your brain the chip of working towards a goal, rather than just romantically believing that there's a dream out there for you. There's no dreams. There's things, you go and you get them if you need them or you want them. And I believe also that there is a huge underestimated power of cooperation and collaboration. There's always someone who has something that you need, and there's always someone who needs something you have. If you believe in this exchange, which may sound a little cosmic, it's like, but there is an exchange to be had. Maybe someone needs to do cave training, and maybe they have a cave that hasn't been explored in their backyard. So why don't I train them, and then they let me explore that cave? That's more or less how I how I live my life. And the other thing, which you said, the most important thing to do, but I'm going to give you a second one, is you have to knock a lot of doors. And you have to knock the doors many times, and you have to knock them even if nobody's answering. When you knock on a door and you don't get an answer, or you get a negative answer, that person already knows your name. So the next time that they will see your name around, they will already know you're after something that they can provide you with, or they will hear your name coming from a different direction, and they'll be like, oh yeah, that's the girl with the coral fossils. So it's a way of acting that just puts every cell in your body focused on the same objective. But yeah, it's tough work and tough energy that goes into projects. And we were talking before about motivation. The motivation is not going to come to you to tell you have to do this, or it has to come from the inside. So go on, knock on the doors, call people, introduce yourself, talk about the topics that you're interested in, do a bunch of reading, research, and write it down.
I love it. I love it. That's absolutely, absolutely amazing advice. I think that's so great. Tamara, I absolutely appreciate you coming on to the podcast today. This has been absolutely wonderful. I feel like we could just go on for hours, so maybe we'll have to do a third session. But no, this has been absolutely amazing. And thank you very much for joining the podcast today.
Thanks for the invitation, and I hope we get to meet again. I hope your canister light will not fall out of the bungee. And I hope that we get to dive together as well. And let's say you're in a different continent, but the community and the interest spots are kind of common. So it's not impossible that we're going to meet in the near future. So I look forward to that as well.
a scuba podcast.